Hello, and welcome to TerraNash. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Find a comfortable place to sit or lie down, letting go of any tension as you settle in. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow. Inhale deeply and exhale gently, letting your body relax with each breath. With every exhale, feel yourself drift further into calmness. Tonight, I'll tell you a story. The Last Heir to the Throne of Spear, a tale of forgotten royalty, ancient power, and the quiet courage that awakens in the unlikeliest of hearts. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon for early access to all our stories and a curated Spotify playlist as well. And if you've been enjoying our bedtime stories, subscribing is a simple and free way to support us. Your support means the world to us, and together we can make TerraNash an even more peaceful place for storytelling. Now, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. Breathe in deeply through your nose and gently out through your mouth. Feel the quiet of the night wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let the worries of the day drift like leaves on a slow river. You are here, in this moment, and nothing else is needed. Close your eyes if you'd like, and allow yourself to be carried away. For in a land forgotten by time, a spark of hope flickers, waiting to rise. Let us begin. The sea whispered against the shore of Fogwood Coast, where dawn came in pale silvers and greys, never quite banishing the mist that clung to the rocks. In a modest fishing village, built from driftwood and stone, life moved slowly, deliberately. Its people hardened by salt, wind, and loss. Among them was Coren, 17 winters old, known for being quiet, sharp-eyed, and unusually kind for someone who never knew their parents. Raised by the village healer, old Nessa, Coren had always felt an ache that couldn't be named. There were no memories of a mother's lullaby or a father's voice. Only dreams, strange ones, of gleaming halls, of firelight on steel, of standing on a high balcony as thousands cheered below. Coren had never told anyone about them. That morning, Coren helped mend nets along the shore when a low tremor rolled beneath their feet. It was brief but strong enough to send the gulls screeching into the sky. From the temple ruins nearby, long buried beneath vines and earth, came a distant sound, a single metallic chime, like something ancient being stirred awake. Curious and drawn by instinct more than reason, Coren made their way toward the half-sunken structure. Most avoided it, calling it cursed. Inside, dust motes floated like stardust through shafts of early light. Crumbling pillars leaned inward, and tangled roots clung to the stones like sleeping serpents. In the center lay a sunken platform with a shattered seal. Coren's heart beat faster. Something called to them, not in words, but in a pulse beneath the skin. Carefully, they stepped onto the platform. As their foot touched the center, the seal gave way with a sigh, and the floor split open in a slow, grinding circle. There, resting untouched for decades, was a spear. Not rusted, not broken, but pristine. Its shaft was of silvery wood that shimmered like moonlight, and its blade gleamed with etched runes that pulsed faintly in Coren's presence. They reached out, hand trembling, and the moment fingers brushed the weapon, a soft burst of light surged into the chamber. Visions cascaded, fragmented memories not their own. A crown forged in fire, a throne made of dark wood and gold, a baby swaddled in velvet, carried through a secret passage by a woman with tear-streaked cheeks. Coren stumbled back, gasping, the spear still gripped tightly in his hand. Behind him, a voice echoed through the temple. "I had hoped the day would never come," said a cloaked figure, stepping from the shadows. Her voice was calm, low, and filled with sorrow. "But the kingdom's last ember has stirred at last. The heir of the throne of spear is awake." Coren looked up, eyes wide, the spear glowing softly beside him. In a heartbeat, everything changed. The quiet life he had known was only the prologue. The story of who he truly was just beginning. Coren stood frozen beneath the ruined temple, the ancient spear still humming in his grip as the cloaked woman moved closer. Her face was shadowed beneath a deep hood, but her presence was both unsettling and oddly familiar, like a forgotten dream returning to the mind just before waking. "I am Mireia," she said gently, lowering her hood to reveal silver-streaked hair and eyes that glinted like polished obsidian. "Guardian of the royal bloodline. I've watched over you from afar since the night the kingdom fell." Coren blinked, his mind reeling. "Royal bloodline? You've got the wrong person. I'm no one. I fix nets. I catch fish." "You were hidden for your safety," Mireia said, stepping closer. "Your name is not just Coren. It is Coren Rion, child of Queen Aveline and heir to the throne of Spear. The night Lord Carneth betrayed your family, your mother sent you away with the last loyalists. You were just an infant." The spear glowed brighter, resonating with the truth of her words. Coren's breath came fast, heart pounding. The images he had seen of the throne, the baby, the woman weeping, were not just visions. They were memories, Mirea's voice softened. This spear is not a weapon of war, Coren. It is a beacon. It answers only to the rightful ruler, one born of the line of flame and feather. You are that heir, and now the kingdom is dying. If you do not rise, there may be nothing left to save. Coren looked down at the weapon in his hands. It felt natural, like it had always belonged there. But fear curled in his chest. He had no training, no knowledge of war, no hunger for power. I'm not ready, Coren whispered. No one ever is, Mireia replied. But the spear chose you, and it never chooses wrong. That night, Coren returned to old Nessa's cottage, silent and distant. Mireia waited outside, unseen. Coren packed only what he needed: a water skin, a faded map from Nessa's shelf, and a worn leather pouch of herbs. Nessa, though frail, watched with knowing eyes. She had always known this day would come. I can't stop you, child, she said quietly as Coren hesitated at the door. But I'll pray the old spirits walk with you. And if you ever forget who you are, just remember how you helped others long before you ever held a spear. Coren embraced her tightly, whispered goodbye, and stepped out into the misty night. Mireia joined him without a word, and together they slipped away into the woods beyond the village. As they walked beneath stars cloaked by fog, the spear strapped across Coren's back shimmered with a quiet light, its ancient runes alive, as if awakening from a long and patient slumber. The road ahead was uncertain, tangled in shadow and peril, but one truth now burned clear. The spear had awakened, and the heir had taken the first step. They travelled east beneath a pale morning sky, where the trees leaned close and the wind whispered stories no one had told in years. Mireia moved with practiced silence, her cloak blending into the woods, while Coren followed behind, each step heavy with questions. The spear, now wrapped in cloth and slung over his back, pulsed faintly with warmth, as if sensing the weight of the land around them. As they crested the hills that overlooked the Valley of Sorrow, Coren's breath caught. The land below had once been part of the kingdom's heart. Farmlands, rivers, and ancient roads. But now it lay broken. Blackened fields stretched for miles, smoke curling from ruined villages, and monstrous machines carved deep wounds into the earth. Towers of stone and iron had risen where once stood forests and shrines. In the far distance, the dark spires of Carnith's capital pierced the sky like jagged thorns. What happened here? Coren asked, voice barely more than a breath. Mireia's expression was hard. Carnith's rise was not slow. With the royal line gone, he promised safety and order. But he gave them fear and chains. Those who resisted were crushed. Magic was outlawed. Temples burned. People were forced to mine the bones of the earth to power his war machines. This is only a glimpse. They passed through a ravaged village where children with hollow eyes watched them from doorways, and elders sat in silence beside cold hearths. Mireia gave what little food she carried. Coren knelt beside a small boy with a broken toy and whispered a promise he didn't yet know how to keep. It won't always be like this. The next night, they made camp beneath a crumbled statue, a weather-worn monument to a long-forgotten king whose face had been deliberately defaced. As Coren stared into the fire, he asked, "Why would Carneth do all this? What does he gain from destroying everything?" Mireia looked into the flames, her eyes distant. Control. When people have nothing, they become easy to rule. Carneth doesn't want loyalty, only obedience. He was once your father's closest brother in arms. But envy runs deep. When he realized he could never have the crown by right, he took it by blood. Coren's hands clenched around the hilt of the spear. Then he has to be stopped. Mireia nodded slowly. He can be, but not with vengeance alone. The people must believe in something again. In you. In the old ways. The spear is not just a weapon. It is a symbol of who we were and who we could be. In the days that followed, Coren began to notice how people stared at him, some with suspicion, others with quiet hope. Word was spreading, whispered from village to village, that a figure bearing the royal spear walked the land. The Wraithguard, Carneth's feared enforcers, grew more restless, searching for signs of rebellion. As the air thickened with danger and prophecy, Coren understood that his name had already begun to echo, softly, like a forgotten song, but growing louder with every step. The kingdom was chained, yes, but chains could be broken, and hope, even buried beneath ruin, could still rise. The path to the shrouded vale was not marked on any map, for it lay hidden behind veils of mist and illusion, guarded by the forest itself. Mireia led Coren through twisted woods, where trees whispered warnings in languages no longer spoken, and the ground was soft with centuries of fallen leaves and forgotten time. The deeper they went, the more the air shifted, thickening, listening. Even the birds fell silent. After 3 days of travel, they came upon a clearing overgrown with ivy and thorn. At its center stood a stone archway partially collapsed, leading into darkness beneath the earth. Vines curled over ancient carvings of fire, wind, and wings, the crest of the royal line. Mireia turned to Coren, her voice low. This is the temple of the first flame. No one enters unless they are of the blood, and none leave unchanged. Coren stepped forward, heart thundering. The spear glowed faintly, guiding him into the hollow beneath the earth. As he descended, Torchless, the light of the spear illuminated long abandoned halls. Moss covered the walls, but beneath the green were murals. Kings and queens of old, wielding the same weapon Coren now carried, standing against great storms, serpents, and wars forgotten by history. At the bottom of the steps, a vast circular chamber opened before him, filled with an eerie, shifting light. As Coren stepped inside alone, the spear's glow brightened, and the doors closed behind him with a thunderous sound. At once, the room transformed. The walls melted into sky. The floor became a reflection pool, and above Coren, stars spun like a living tapestry. From the water rose shimmering forms, spectres of monarchs past, cloaked in regal flame and shadow. Their voices echoed in unison, not harsh, but solemn. Child of Aveline, blood of the spear, you are untested, you are uncertain, you seek to rise, but do you know what you are? Coren's breath caught. I don't know who I'm meant to be, but I want to try. One spirit stepped forward, a queen with hair like fire and eyes of gold. Then face the trials and find your heart. The first trial struck swiftly. A mirror image of Coren stepped from the light, identical in every way, but twisted by fear and doubt. You're not worthy, it hissed. You'll fail them all. The two clashed, the real Coren wielding the spear, while the reflection struck with biting words and mirrored movements. With every blow Coren struck, he banished another whisper of self-loathing, until the reflection crumbled into ash. The second trial summoned the past. Coren found himself standing in the night his mother had fled the palace, watching Queen Aveline cradle a baby and press a kiss to its brow. Coren moved to call out, but the scene shimmered. You cannot change what was, a voice intoned. But can you accept it? Tears slid down Coren's cheeks as he nodded, pain and clarity mingling. I'll carry it with me. The final trial was silence. Coren stood alone in darkness, spear in hand. No voice, no vision, just the weight of choice. Stay in the comfort of not knowing, or step forward and claim a future not yet written. Slowly, Coren took a single step. The darkness broke. The chamber reformed. The illusions gone. The monarchs bowed their heads. The spear's runes burned brighter than ever. And when the doors opened again, Coren emerged changed. Maria waited at the threshold. She saw the light in Coren's eyes, the steadiness in his step, and offered a rare, quiet smile. You passed. Coren looked to the sky, where night had just begun to fall. I understand now, he said. It's not just about blood. It's about choosing to rise. And rise he would. Coren and Maria left the shrouded veil as twilight spilled across the treetops, casting golden veins through the dark canopy. The spear, once a silent weight across Coren's back, now felt like an extension of his spirit, alive, listening, and ever watchful. The trials had not only tested Coren's resolve, they had awakened something deeper, a sense of purpose that pulsed with every heartbeat. But purpose alone was not enough to reclaim a kingdom. He would need allies. The resistance had long been scattered, broken by fear, and hunted by the Wraith Guard, but not extinguished. Mireia knew where to find the embers. They travelled eastward to the ruins of Eldergate, a crumbling fortress hidden within a narrow ravine, once used to house scholars and scrolls before Carneth had ordered its burning. Now, beneath its skeletal towers, rebels gathered in whispers and flickering candlelight. Captain Tamsin was the first to greet them. Tall and broad-shouldered, her armor was patched with years of battle, but her eyes were sharp and her voice steady. Once commander of the Royal Guard, she had survived the fall of the palace by sheer will and had been waiting ever since for a reason to raise her sword again. "Tamsin," Mireia said, stepping aside. "The heir has returned." Tamsin looked Coren up and down with a skeptical gaze. "You look like a fisherman's apprentice." Coren didn't flinch. "And yet here I stand, with the spear that hasn't chosen anyone in 2 decades. There was a long silence before Tamsin let out a short laugh. "Fair enough." She offered her hand. "Let's see if you're more than just a symbol." Others followed. Jarek, a nimble thief with mismatched eyes and a quick tongue, joined next. He claimed he had once pickpocketed Carneth himself and lived to brag about it. His loyalty was uncertain, but his skills in infiltration and sabotage were unmatched. Then came Asher, a child no older than 10, who spoke in strange riddles and claimed to dream of places yet to happen. Her eyes glowed faintly in moonlight, and animals seemed to follow her wherever she walked. Coren was uneasy around her at first, but Mireia called her a seerling, a rare child born under an omen star. Each ally brought something different: knowledge, power, hope, unpredictability. But trust had to be earned. That night, around a small fire in the fortress depths, Coren told them everything: the visions, the trials, the truth of who he was. Some listened in silence. Others questioned, but none walked away. Jarek raised a cup of bitterroot brew. "To the Last Heir," he said, grinning. "May you not get us all killed." Tamsin's smile was faint, but present. "To the spear," and Asher simply said, "You're late, but right on time." As dawn broke across Eldergate, the rebels unfurled a tattered banner, its golden sigil of a rising flame barely visible. For the first time in years, it was hoisted high. The land stirred. Whispers travelled in every direction. The air was no longer just a rumour. The fire had been rekindled. But in the black spires of the capital, Lord Carneth stood before a mirror of polished obsidian. He gazed into it as smoke curled around his fingers. "So," he murmured, voice like a knife drawn slow. "The child lives." And somewhere deep below the palace, the Wraith Guard began to stir. The journey to Emberdeep was treacherous, winding through jagged cliffs and shadowed ravines that had long since fallen off the maps. Once a thriving dwarven trade city carved into the mountainside, Emberdeep now lay buried beneath centuries of stone, its entrances hidden and its lights long extinguished. But it was said the embers of rebellion still glowed there, deep underground, where Carneth's reach had not yet fully tightened. Coren and his small company arrived at dusk, the stone path leading to a weathered archway carved with ancient runes. Tamsin raised her torch, casting flickering light on the worn symbols. "This is the last place Carneth's soldiers won't follow," she said. "But it's also the last place we can afford to trust blindly." Inside, Emberdeep was both eerie and majestic. Its halls were wide and echoing, lit by pockets of moss that glowed with a dull blue light. The city hummed faintly, as if the stone itself remembered the footsteps of thousands. Dwarven runes lined every corridor, many of them broken, their meanings lost. They were welcomed by the Emberkin, a hardy people who had survived underground through clever trade and brutal resilience. At their head stood Maelric, a grizzled elder with a gold-plated jaw and a stare that could chip stone. He agreed to shelter them for 3 nights and no more. The tunnels, he warned, were restless. Coren felt unease grow with each passing hour. Whispers reached his ears when no one was near. The spear's runes flickered at times, reacting to unseen eyes. And Asher, the seerling, refused to sleep, murmuring to shadows in the corners of the room. On the second night, Coren awoke to find Jarek missing. Panic flared. They searched the lower halls, the forgotten forges, the flooded passageways. And then they found him, standing with Maelric in a narrow chamber, exchanging a sealed letter and a pouch of coin. Coren stepped from the shadows, heart pounding. "Jarek!" The thief turned, startled, then sighed. "I told you not to trust me so easily." Betrayal burned sharper than any blade. Jarek had sold their location to the Wraith Guard in exchange for immunity and safe passage out of the kingdom. "They would have caught up to us eventually," he said bitterly. "This just speeds things along." Coren raised the spear but didn't strike. Instead, he lowered it slowly, voice quiet but firm. "Run, and if I see you again, I won't hesitate." Jarek vanished into the tunnels, but the damage had been done. By morning, Emberdeep shook with footsteps not their own. The Wraith Guard had arrived, tall, silent beings of shadow armor and smoke, with faces like masks carved from black ice. They moved without sound, their weapons humming with dark energy. Coren and the others fought their way through crumbling halls, the spear glowing bright against the dark. Asha summoned light with a whisper. Tamsin held the front line like a storm, and Morea's blades danced with fury. But they were outnumbered. In the chaos, Coren was taken, bound in chains of smoke and steel, and dragged through a hidden passage only the Wraithguard knew. The last thing he saw was Asha's tear-filled gaze fading into the dark. When Coren awoke, it was in the Tower of Mirrors, a cold, obsidian prison where truth twisted and time unraveled. He was alone, his spear gone, his thoughts invaded by illusions. Every wall reflected different versions of him, weak, cruel, hopeless. Voices whispered from every corner. But amid the torment, a revelation came. One memory cut through the illusions like fire through frost. Of his mother, Queen Aveline, whispering a name as she cradled him. "You are more than air," she said. "You are the flame that endures." Coren gritted his teeth, stood tall, and in the mirror before him, the image shifted, not to a prisoner, but a monarch wreathed in light. The spear reappeared in his grasp, blazing with runes too ancient to name. The chains shattered. Coren stepped forward. The heir had not fallen. He had risen. The Tower of Mirrors cracked and groaned as Coren stepped through the broken chains, the ancient spear pulsing in his hand with a new, searing intensity. The illusions that had tormented him dissolved into smoke, fleeing from the light. But the chamber did not fall silent. A low voice rose from the depths of the tower, not spoken aloud, but blooming in Coren's mind, like the whisper of fire catching kindling. "You are not ready. Not yet." Coren turned toward the sound and found himself no longer in the tower, but standing in a vast, dark void, endless and quiet. Above him, stars spun in unfamiliar patterns. Before him hovered a being of flame and metal, tall and weightless, its form shifting like smoke woven with starlight. The spear in Coren's hand lifted on its own, drawn toward the figure. "I am the heart of the spear," the voice said. "The will of every monarch who has held me. I am forged not of wood or steel, but of vow and sacrifice." Coren stood still, awed and unafraid. "Why bring me here?" "To show you the cost," the spear spirit said. With a wave of its flame-wreathed hand, visions burst forth all around him. Of kings who died defending villages, of queens who gave their lives to protect the weak, of warriors who stood alone against the darkness, not for glory, but because no one else would. One does not wield the spear to rule, it said. One wields it to serve. The images shifted again. Coren saw himself walking into battle, alone. Then he saw himself crowned, but bowed before his people. He saw his death, not in fear or fire, but as a quiet passing beneath a tree, surrounded by children laughing. "Will you carry this?" the spear asked. "Not for power, but for those who cannot fight for themselves?" Coren closed his eyes. The weight of destiny had always felt heavy, distant, unreal. But now it settled around him like a cloak of wind. "Yes," he said, "I will carry it. For them." The void shimmered. The spirit of the spear vanished into light. Coren felt the runes on the weapon burn into his palm. No longer just a relic, but a living bond. Power filled him, not as a storm, but as steady flame. The void faded. Coren awoke in the ruins of the tower, lying among shattered mirrors and broken stone. His bindings were gone. The door, once sealed, now hung ajar, creaking in the wind. Waiting outside was Morea, bruised and bloodied, but alive. Beside her stood Tamsin, Asher, and even Jarek, grim-faced, guilt clinging to him like a second skin. "You escaped," Morea said softly, disbelief in her voice. "No," Coren said, standing tall. "I was released. The spear knows I'm ready now." He looked out toward the horizon, where the dark silhouette of the capital loomed in the distance, veiled in smoke and stormlight. "The time for waiting is over. We march to the throne." And as he stepped down from the broken tower, the ground trembled slightly, as though the kingdom itself had felt the shift. The heir had not only awakened, he had accepted the fire. The wind howled across the moors as Coren and his companions emerged from the tower's shadow. Word of their return spread faster than any rider, carried by wind, rumor, and something older than memory. Across the kingdom, those who had long buried their hopes began to stir. Farmers whispered the name of the heir in their fields. Blacksmiths hammered blades with old sigils hidden beneath the steel. Children played pretend, wielding sticks like spears, shouting Coren's name into the dusk. The spark had caught flame. Morea wasted no time. They regrouped at the Hollow, a vast glade once used by royal scouts, to gather what remained of the resistance. Tamsin trained volunteers day and night, forging a ragtag militia into a force with purpose. Jarek, seeking redemption, returned with maps and stolen scrolls from Carnith's outposts, revealing weak points in his defenses. And Asha, she wandered among the people, speaking softly to those who had given up, reminding them that hope had a face once more. Then came the old banners, torn and faded, hidden for decades in cellars and caves. They emerged like ghosts of the past, each bearing the crest of a long-silenced house. The clan of the Howling Pines, the Falcon Watch, the Riverborn, tribes from the Mistward Highlands, horse lords from the Salt Steppes. One by one, they answered the call. Not for a crown, but for a reckoning. Coren stood at the center of it all, not as a ruler, but as a guide. Each day he walked among the soldiers, listened to their fears, remembered their names. The spear never left his side, now warm with purpose, its runes shifting like embers, breathing in rhythm with the land itself. Before they could march on the capital, Coren insisted on one final stop, the ruins of the royal city of Orinthus, the once shining jewel of the kingdom, now blackened by fire and silence. Beneath its collapsed great hall, Coren knelt where the old throne had once stood, now nothing but scorched stone and ash. "This is where it ended," Coren whispered. "But it's also where it begins again." He planted the spear into the cracked ground. The runes pulsed outwards like a heartbeat, and for a moment, the wind calmed. The light spread through the cracks, up the broken walls, and into the sky. Across the land, those attuned to old magic felt it, an awakening. The heir had claimed his path not through force, but by returning to the ashes. With the banners raised and hearts steeled, the march began. Thousands strong, moving as one across fields that had not seen unity in 20 years. Old songs were sung once more. Drums echoed like thunder. Campfires became places of stories and oaths. And on a distant balcony in Black Glass Citadel, Lord Carneth watched the growing light with narrowing eyes. He summoned his generals, his spies, his warlocks. The Wraithguard gathered in silence. His voice, colder than the grave, rang through the hall. "Let them come," he said. "I have waited for this." But even he did not know what truly approached. For this was not just an army. It was a reckoning shaped by memory, fire, and the will of a kingdom that had endured too long in silence. The banners of the forgotten had returned, and they were not coming to kneel. The sky was iron grey as Coren and the army of the Forgotten reached the outskirts of Black Glass Citadel. The capital loomed ahead like a scar upon the land, its walls forged from obsidian and shadow, its towers rising like spears against the heavens. Smoke coiled from the ramparts, and from within echoed the slow tolling of a war bell, deep and cold as winter stone. Coren stood before the gathered host, his cloak tugged by the wind, the spear in his hand burning with a light that had not been seen in decades. He looked over the thousands who had come from every corner of the broken kingdom. Farmers, warriors, seers, and scholars, bound not by blood or crown, but by the quiet refusal to be ruled by fear any longer. "We do not march to conquer," Coren said, voice steady. we march to remember who we are. We are not Carniths. We never were. Today, we reclaim our name, our land, our story. A roar rose behind him, not of rage, but of unity. The banners were raised, the drums began to beat, and the charge began. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations. The gates of black glass were sealed with runes of binding. But Asha, her hands glowing with light, whispered to the walls in the tongue of dreams. The stone wept and cracked. Tamsin led the vanguard, breaking the gate with a battering ram formed from the roots of the sacred elmwood. The Wraithguard surged forth, silent and monstrous, blades drawn from shadow. Coren moved through the battlefield like a flame, the spear gleaming with every strike. The weapon did not kill with brutality, but with grace, disarming, disabling, casting out darkness with searing light. The spear was not meant for conquest. It was meant to heal a broken kingdom, one breath, one moment at a time. Jarek, blade in hand, fought beside Coren with grim determination. "Not bad for a thief," he grunted, shielding Coren from a Wraithguard strike. "I think I'm earning my way back." "You're halfway there," Coren replied, a flash of fire in his eyes. The battle surged up the citadel steps, toward the throne chamber at its heart. Inside, Lord Carnith waited, clad in obsidian armor, the blade of unmaking in his grasp. He stood before the blackened throne, his face ageless, twisted by power long since stolen. When Coren entered, the world seemed to narrow. "So," Carnith said, his voice echoing like thunder through the stone, "the child lives and brings an army of ghosts." "I bring their hope," Coren said, "and your end." They met at the base of the throne, spear against blade. The clash sent waves of force through the chamber, shattering stained glass, toppling statues. Carnith fought like one who had long prepared for this moment, drawing power from every corner of the dark magic he had mastered. But Coren did not fight alone. Behind every swing of the spear was the memory of the fallen, the strength of every name whispered in secret for 20 years. The runes of the spear flared, brighter and brighter, until it was no longer just a weapon, but a beacon. "I should have ended you as an infant," Carnith snarled, staggering. "You tried," Coren said, raising the spear one final time. "But the fire never died. The light burst forth, not to destroy, but to cleanse. The darkness that clung to Carnith peeled away like burning leaves, and with a scream that echoed across the mountains, he crumbled into ash. The silence that followed was absolute. Coren stood alone before the throne. The spear flickered once, then dimmed, not with death, but with peace. And outside, the kingdom exhaled. The sun rose over Black Glass Citadel for the first time in years, without the shadow of Carnith looming over it. Where darkness had reigned, morning light spilled gently across the stone, softening the jagged edges of war. The banners of the resistance still waved in the wind, not with defiance now, but with quiet reverence. The battle was over, the tyrant was gone, and Coren stood at the heart of the kingdom, the spear in hand, the throne behind him, empty. The throne chamber had once been grand, a hall of carved obsidian and glass, meant to reflect light in endless patterns. But under Carnith's rule, it had been twisted into something cold and sharp, a monument to power, not to people. Coren walked slowly to the throne and paused. His reflection stared back at him in the black stone floor. Battle-worn, changed. No longer the quiet fisher child from Fogward Coast. Mireia approached in silence. "It's yours now," she said softly. "All of it." Coren turned, eyes steady. "That throne was built for kings who ruled with silence and fear. I won't sit there." The room fell still. Murmurs rippled among the survivors. Tamsin stepped forward. "Then what will you do, Your Grace?" Coren looked to the people who had fought beside him, not as subjects, but as equals. "I will lead, but not as ruler, not from a throne above. The kingdom must rise not with crowns, but with hands joined. We will rebuild together. We will choose our future." He lifted the spear high, and its light poured through the broken stained glass windows, bathing the room in gold. "Let this be the last war for a throne. From today forward, this seat will remain empty, not out of fear, but out of choice." Cheers didn't come at first. There was only silence. And then, one voice began to clap. Then another. Then many. It was not the roar of a victory. It was the sound of relief, of understanding, of beginning again. In the days that followed, the people of the kingdom returned to their homes and began to rebuild. Fields were tilled. Temples were cleansed. Bridges, both literal and broken by years of fear, were mended. The resistance became a council. The banners were folded with honor and laid to rest, not in mourning, but in memory. Coren traveled far and wide, not to rule, but to listen, to heal, to remind the people that the flame of their kingdom had never truly gone out. It had only waited, hidden in the quiet, carried in dreams. The spear was laid to rest in the Hall of Winds, placed atop a stone carved with one line. For the day it is needed again. Years passed, songs were sung, stories were told. Children grew up hearing tales of the last heir who did not become a monarch, but a guardian. And on certain nights, beneath the stars, when the wind blows just right through the old trees of Fogwood Coast. One might hear the faint hum of a spear still pulsing with light, as if remembering a promise made long ago. The kingdom had found its fire again, not in crowns, but in courage.